Jeepers Creepers is one of my favourite horror films of all time, and it's probably the first horror film I ever watched. As a child, I was fascinated by the tension and the demonic nature of this film, and I went through a phase of watching it every single day. And yes, I do mean every single day. I would wake up in the morning, pop it on the TV, watch half of it before school, and then I would come back from school and watch the second half. No, I am not a serial killer, it is just a very good film. I think you'll know what I mean when I say it's a really satisfying film to watch every single time because it scares the shit out of me. Now, what makes this film even darker is the fact that it is based on a true event that happened in the summer of 1990. But before we get into that, let's just run through the film itself to remind ourselves of what happens. The film. Written and directed by Victor Salva and executive produced by Francis Ford Coppola, Jeepers Creepers tells the story of a brother and sister, Derry and Trish Jenner, who are driving home from college for spring break when they are suddenly tailgated by an old beat-up truck. The siblings, played by Justin Long and Gina Phillips, are harassed by the truck driver before finally speeding off down the highway. A while later, after talking about their attack, Derry and Trish find themselves driving past the driver of the truck, who is now loading bodies wrapped in sheets into a pipe at a churchyard. This is truly the creepiest part of the film, and it makes me shiver every time I think about it. The two then become the targets of the truck driver, who they find out is actually a demonic creature known as the Creeper. Throughout the film, they gain more and more insight into what this horrific creature actually is, and learn that it hunts every 23 years for 23 days, taking various body parts from its victims. Now, if you were actually expecting me to reveal that there is a creature that comes to life every 23 years and feasts on the organs of people, I will have to let you down. The Creeper himself is definitely a work of fiction, but it's the film's plot that is rooted in reality. The true story. On the 15th of April 1990, Ray and Marie Thornton are driving along quiet Snow-Perry Road in Coldwater, Michigan, and as they drive, they play a game to pass the time. The game was to make words and phrases out of the number plates that passed them, and if you've seen Jeepers Creepers, you'll find this fact quite satisfying because that is exactly what they do in the film.
Yay, gay fever! No, gay forever! Gay forever! Ha, that's mine. That's 3 for little bros.
That's a 6, not a G, you idiot. That's sexy forever. That's mine. That's 5 to 2. Gay fever.
As a green 1984 Chevrolet truck passes them at high speed, Marie wins that particular round of the game. The GZ on the number plate makes her exclaim, "Geez, he must be in a hurry." They continue on their drive, and it wasn't long until they passed an old schoolhouse in the middle of nowhere. To their horror, they witness a man standing just beside it, and in his hands was a white sheet covered in blood that he was trying to dispose of. Marie saw the man's vehicle parked between the school and a large tank and knew immediately it was the Chevrolet that had overtaken them earlier. The siblings continued driving to find a phone, and Marie wrote down what she remembered of the license plate. But their journey was interrupted when they saw the truck quickly approaching them from behind. The Chevrolet followed them closely for a few miles and eventually turned off the road into a rest stop. Ray and Marie still needed to call the police, but they wanted to gather more information, like the number plate, so they courageously turned around in search of the truck. When they passed it, a tall man wearing a white hat stands at the back of the vehicle with the doors open, changing the number plate. He's also forgotten to close the passenger door, so the interior of the truck is visible. Marie and Ray see that the inside of the truck is completely covered in blood. Earlier that day, 46-year-old Dennis DePue went over to his ex-wife's home to pick up his children. Joint custody had been part of the divorce settlement, but Dennis still used the guest house as an office despite not living at home anymore. He'd also got into the house when no one was around, even though his wife Marilyn changed the locks because she was scared of him. The couple's divorce wasn't a surprise, and Marilyn had confided in friends that Dennis was a bully. However, Dennis offered Marilyn whatever she wanted from the settlement. But there were underlying issues that their children had picked up on. They didn't want to spend time with their father, and on that fateful day, the youngest refused to get into his car, and the others soon followed suit. A fight then erupted between Dennis and his children and Marilyn also joined in. Dennis accused his ex-wife of turning his children against him, and in anger, he pushed her down the stairs and began beating her as the children looked on. One of the children ran to the neighbour's home to call for help, but on her return, Dennis told her that he was taking Marilyn to the hospital, but neither of them turned up at local hospitals, and Marilyn was never seen alive again. When the brother and sister, Ray and Marie, saw Dennis by the school, he was disposing of the sheet he'd used to transport Marilyn's dead body. The animal hole he tried to push the sheet down wasn't large enough, and when Ray and Marie went back to see what Dennis had been up to, they found it sticking out of the ground. When law enforcement and forensics arrived on the scene, the Michigan State Police and the Sheriff's Office had already begun their manhunt for Dennis, following the call from his daughter. The area was taped off, and nearby, forensics found tire tracks and a pool of blood. The treads would later be linked to Dennis's truck, and the blood was matched to Marilyn. The next day, Marilyn's body was discovered in the brush next to a quiet road halfway between the home and the schoolhouse. She had been shot in the back of her head by her ex-husband. In the days following his wife's murder, Dennis went on the run and sent several letters to family and friends. He posted 17 letters in total, with various postmarks from across East American states. They were full of long rants in which he tried to justify killing Marilyn, which is just unbelievable at this point. In one such letter, it read, "Marilyn had many opportunities to treat me fairly during this divorce, and she chose to string it out, trick me, lie to me, and when you lose your wife, children, and home, there's not much left. I was too old to start over." And how selfish can you actually get? All I can read in that letter is him. He is the most important person, and he's just thinking about himself. Nearly a year later, in March 1991, Unsolved Mysteries aired the episode of Dennis DePue's crime. The night that episode screened, a woman named Mary arrived at her home in Dallas, Texas, surprised to see her boyfriend's vehicle in the driveway. As she opened the front door, she was confronted by the boyfriend, Hank, who told her he needed to drive home as his mother was very ill. He asked her to make him some sandwiches for the road while he packed his belongings in the hopes to avoid her from watching the episode. Hank packed up his green 1984 Chevrolet van and hugged his girlfriend. She never did see him again, but she soon found out who he really was. Mary's friend was the one to call into the hotline, reporting her friend's boyfriend as Dennis DePue. She gave the operator his license plate number and where they thought he was going, and 4 hours later, he was found. Louisiana State Troopers were the first to spot the truck, and after trying to stop the vehicle, they set out on a high-speed chase that lasted for 15 miles. Warren County Sheriff Paul Barrett told his team to shoot out the truck's tyres if they couldn't stop him, and that is exactly what they did, hitting both rear tyres. Dennis managed to drive on the rims for half a mile before the car eventually gave up and stopped. He shot at officers with his gun, with 2 going through the windscreen and 1 through an open window. He then turned the gun around and shot himself. It does annoy me when murderers get off so easy by killing themselves, but I would like to think they're somewhere rotting and constantly being tortured for what they've done. Dennis was buried at Eagle Cemetery in Indiana, far from his wife's final resting place in Oakland County, Michigan. I also find it extremely weird when murderers are buried in a cemetery with other people. Maybe this is a particular cemetery with other criminals, but I don't know if that's the thing, to be honest. But to actually take up a space in the ground after what you've done, I don't understand it. I would personally just burn the body and just spread it somewhere, like in the sea, so it's just gone and it's not taking up any more space, you know? The similarities. So as you can see, there are many similarities between the true story of Dennis DePue's murder and the Jeepers Creepers film. In actual fact, Ray and Marie's sworn testimony provided the primary source material for the film. Though Jeepers Creepers elaborated on the makeup of the killer, they were both equally the embodiment of evil and terror. The film is definitely an example of how immoral humanity can be and the types of things we are capable of doing to each other. I had no idea this film was based on a true story until I stumbled across a video that a YouTuber had made, and he was recording the places of where these things happened, and I was absolutely fascinated by it. I do find this a really cool fact, not the murder itself, but the fact that a film that I've been obsessed with since I was really young is based on a true story. It also does make the film more disturbing in a way because of the truth behind it, and it's definitely changed the way I look at it now. So if you haven't watched Jeepers Creepers, please go give it a watch now, and if you have watched it and you weren't aware that it was based on the murder of Dennis DePue, let me know how it's changed the way you look at the film. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this one. As always, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in my next one.